Hey guys, thanks for joining me today. Today I'm going to talk a little bit about the Undeparted, the message specifically, and all the things that kind of went down that day when we were recording the interviews and the stuff that the message came from. We were going to go back and just do an interview with Rebecca, an interview with Steven, to just get how are things now? What's going on at the shop? And then we were also going to do an interview with Nick, another ex-employee who had an experience, a testimonial, and we just wanted to add that potentially to the film. We set everything up, everything felt good in the shop, and we did Rebecca's interview. During the interview, a light failed. You know, in my career at this point in time, you know, maybe about 2 decades, I've only had one light fail. And so it's not a common thing for that to happen. But, you know, we didn't think much of it. We took that light out and we were able to work with just the one light. We completed Rebecca's interview. Everything went well. And we moved on to Steven's interview. During Steven's interview, Rob had brought his audio kit, which had a device that he could record and make adjustments to the audio. And during that shoot, his batteries died and he went to change the batteries. And unfortunately, all his batteries that he went to change were dead. He had told me that he had charged all of them and that together that would give him normally about 3 days of time to record stuff. So I thought that was strange, but you know, things happen and you make mistakes, and I just chalked that up to we made a mistake. And what we did is we plugged the audio cables directly into the camera at the time, and we just recorded straight that way, which is a normal thing to do. We do that quite a bit, actually, and I wasn't too worried about it. And the other thing that we did, because we were behind already, we decided just to plug everything in. So we plugged the camera into the wall. We plugged the recording device. We have a external recorder that's a monitor. And that allowed that camera at that time to record a much higher quality than internally in the camera. Steven's shoot seemed to go well, and we finished up. And then Nick came in and we did Nick's shoot and everything seemed fine. Once I pulled it into the editing system, you know, it was just the picture which turned to black, and really it was just a 4-minute block of audio and that black video over it for that 4-minute time. And what we're going to do is we're going to go in and, you know, I'm going to show you the area, the 2.5 minute area where the message came in, because the first part hadn't quite failed as much, but when it started failing, you know, is when the message starts occurring. And then there was a little on the end, but I cut it because we're already going to sit there and listen to 2.5 minutes. So I'm going to play that in full. We're going to watch that, and then I'm going to go and talk a little bit about that, and we'll look at the timeline. Okay?
A year means seem to start in terms of the portal, the door. So they're here. They like to be. I float things back and forth with a more open. Oh, jeez. Since our customers normal come in, what stick it in meter is, I acknowledged that medium that was out of, and she said, you know, she had just what spirits can do, what spirit that would on and go back. If Rebecca Lee and is leaving the state.
Okay, doing that. Start right there. Ever hear me? So if I ask you a question, you have to kind of respond by packaging that question back. So if you say, what's your name? You say, my name is... Oh. Being on that, sorry. We need... A little bit hard. What's your name?
Fatigue restoration. Thing.
Trying to see, because
Well, I noticed there's a... But it was a The period of time I worked or so, and weekends and
Experience?
yeah, but sure. It's it, and other than being here, and there's just a lot for, and really starting to gain independence.
Okay. Right. What were you doing?
Experience that I had from the back of the move thing door again.
And it
Just the frame of the working in that room, had any trouble with that door budge. It was, and yeah,
Right.
the week I was doing in the summer, a little afraid. Back to it, but it wasn't. The door, you wasn't really
And then what?
back to the walked in of what happened, and
Okay. Explain.
I think it was
Significant.
it hadn't. What was that?
Don't know.
We didn't handwork. Up, this felt like something was pushed to the lean just down to the building.
I saw the other side.
To go look at the inch of light,
I knew I was.
and it interferes on
That's just
18 or so. He wanted then
do.
the door opened. I figured,
Fast.
and I experienced it.
Have what?
It had a little bit, and the same I lean to. And
When I first saw this message, I was really upset. And I told my wife about all these things that had happened. And mind you, she believes in spirits and ghosts. And, you know, I was just like, ugh, you know, like it was just such a rough day. And to come home and have this. And she tells me, she says, if you don't want stuff like this to happen, then don't work where it's known that there's ghosts. And I literally, you know, say, there are no such thing as ghosts. And, you know, the next day, I was driving down to the shop because there was a strange ticking sound. And on the way down, I was really just thinking in the car about all this, and I was thinking about how closed-minded I was. And, you know, when you put those blinders on and you're closed-minded, then, you know, you're not going to believe anything. You're not going to allow things to, you know, you're not going to be able to look at things in a fair way. And as a filmmaker, that's the goal, is to look at things and let people speak and let people tell their stories. The only one thing on this show that I can with 100% tell you is that the things that happened to me on set, those things really happened. I can't speak for other people that came in and gave testimonials, but, you know, I did feel like those things were coming from an honest space. And, you know, that's all that I can do. And so I feel like they were honest, and you'll just have to be the judge of those things. When it comes to the things that happen on set, I can't say what the cause of those things are, but I can say that they really happened. I love fireside stories, and if someone wants to tell a ghost story fireside, I have always found those fascinating. And so that's kind of the angle that we went at, is that the stories themselves are interesting enough. And Sand Hill, we didn't have a lot of history. In the future, if we have new locations, hopefully we can find things with richer history and richer story that we can cover. This specific location was in the same family for generations. You know, this is the owner of the property, her grandfather, you know, great, maybe even owned that property, and it passed down, you know, all the way to her, and she doesn't, there's just no recorded history because of that. It wasn't a transfer of land and new people living on the land, although the land has been cut up a little bit, you know, and the store rests on a portion of that land. So after we went and looked for this ticking sound, and I'll let you hear it in a bit, I got home and I decided to actually listen to what you just heard and just feel it out. So this is the timeline here, and you can see that it's broken up into segments. Now, the recording device uses NTSF, so it uses an older system that can only create 4 gigabyte files, and then it has to write a new file. So you have all of these 4 gigabyte files that equal the final, the bigger file, and you can stitch those back together with a app that they had. So what you have here, and I just put those back together, is the segments that kind of hit me, and I immediately grabbed those and pulled them down. And once we get to the end, I just took out the space between them, and that's the message that we had. So we're gonna listen to this again.
A year means seemed to start did in terms of the portal.
And did enter the portal, something I took, but you can hear the choppiness, the jumpiness. Then there's this silence, which we didn't have much of.
Float things back and forth with a more open.
Then it's like suddenly he yells like more open, and then there's this static that just, it fully peaks the audio, and it just continues for a while. And it's I've never seen anything like that happen.
Oh, jeez.
And the irony is that we come out of that horrible sound, and the cut is from Steven. Like, it's almost like, whoops. But it's like that would never have happened in sequence, and this was never, Rob is monitoring audio, and of course this isn't happening. Everything seems normal to him, but it's like it's getting chopped. It's like it's getting cut together, in some way. Again, I don't know how to explain it, and I would say that device I have, that I still have that today. I still use that on almost every single set I have, and it's never had this type of situation happen again. Then there's some weird things that happen though. Let me play this.
Take a look at the digital light.
Take a look at the digital light.
Take a look at the digital light.
Take a look.
Take a look at the digital light.
What's interesting is take a look at the digital light. And we had a discussion. I talked to Harriet about this, but it's like the digital light failed. We had a flex light, a Westcott flex panel, 1x2 that failed, and it's a digital light that you control by a digital thing. And I think it's weird that somehow take a look at the digital light is actually in there. And then we have this really weird sound that comes up right before I take a piece, and if you hear it,
and it interferes on, and it interferes.
I don't even. That is such a strange.
And it interferes on.
So you can hear how choppy this is, and these are broken fragments of time being edited like an editor would edit, like we edit this film, but we didn't do this. I think it's interesting that it's almost like we got forced into plugging our stuff in the wall. And this is a place that has a lot of flickering lights, a lot of electrical issues. And with flickering lights for me, we have flickering lights in our bathroom. And I just feel like it's just a contact point, in that switch, that one specific switch. So, when I hear about flickering lights and stuff, I'm pretty skeptical about what that means. I'm not saying it can't be something. I'm just saying that my guess is that the majority of the time it's something with the circuitry and that lever and not making contact, All right, so once we take those pieces and we bring them down here, here's what we get.
Did in turn the portal more open.
Move thing. Door again. A little afraid. It interferes on. Lean to.
I mean, the first time I heard that message, I got chills. And but at the same time, you see that there was a process to it, and I felt like maybe this, because I did listen and I did pull out things that stood out to me, I felt like this wasn't legitimate. This wasn't a legitimate thing to do. So I called Harriet and I talked to her, and she said she felt that it was. She said because some communication like this would be incredibly challenging, right, to overcome and make that happen. And sometimes we have to look and interpret things in order to get that information. And it's all happening in real time too, right? It's all happening during the recording of the interview. So, we take that message, and that would never on its own have made this film. That just we wouldn't have put that in, because there was, for me, I just felt like the fact that we did any manipulation to it just felt wrong to me. But I still wanted to tell Rebecca, and I was kind of worried to tell her, and I didn't know how she would take something like this. So when I was heading down to Sand Hill, I decided to call Harriet, and I asked her if I should tell Rebecca the message at that point. And Harriet said that if I decided to tell Rebecca, I should take her out of the store in case the spirits of the store were listening. So when Rob and I arrived at the store, I decided at that point that I wanted to tell Rebecca, and I asked Rebecca if we could go outside and I could talk to her about something. So Rob, myself, and Rebecca walked outside. If I'm looking at Sand Hill, you can see here Sand Hill, and we walked out of this area and we walked all the way down beneath this huge tree. And I told her about the message, and we talked for a little bit, and she was really curious and wanted to hear the message. And it was too noisy, as it was kind of starting to be peak traffic at that point. So we walked back to my car, which at the time was sitting over here. Let me see. I do have a photo here. You can see my car here. This is right after the tree crashed down, and Rob actually had brought a camera. Unfortunately, we didn't have a follow camera with audio, because this is a very small, very, very low budget production, and we weren't able to have that kind of follow camera for this situation. And it would have been great, because the anxiety after the tree falling that I felt and that Rob felt, you could really sense and feel that. And if I had spoken to the camera at that point, you would have felt that, and it would have been very genuine and honest. And so in the future, given the budget, we hope to incorporate a follow camera into our shoots for the Undeparted. So if we're lucky enough to do episode 2 or beyond, we hope to incorporate that and make the show even better. Here you can see the tree is scattered onto the road, and it goes out farther into the road, and it was actually blocking cars from driving through this side. They had to go around into the other lane, and there was kind of a backup at one point. So Rob and I got a broom from inside of Sand Hill, and we went out and moved all the big stuff and swept the road to get rid of that. Another thing you can see is during that moment, when this all happened, near the red shed over here, you can see on the ground laying flat, this is a shell for a pickup truck, and it was leaning up against the shed, and that also fell over, and the glass inside of that shattered. These are things that didn't make the film, those conversations, but they did happen. So one of the other things that happened during this shoot is this weird ticking sound, and I'm gonna play that right now for us.
And the door wouldn't budge at all. I walked around, got what I needed, touched the door again, and I pulled it open for me.
Did that door close on you, or was it just shut and it just was locked?
It was cracked. It was cracked open. It was leaning against the frame of the door, but I couldn't move it at all. I could see light through it, but I couldn't move the door from the back of the building. We
thought it was a wristwatch or something like that, but the only people that were there all day, and it was in both camera recordings, Rebecca's first interview, which we had all the footage from, and it happened during the part of Steven's interview that came out fine. And then it happened in all the B camera footage. And then Rebecca and Steven and Nick were not there for all the interviews. So it either came from something I was wearing, my friend Chris, who was on the shoot helping out, was wearing, Rob was here wearing, or something that was in the store. There's a moment here.
Couldn't move the door.
There's another tick in there.
But I couldn't move the door.
Tick. There's two ticks right in that moment. Here. Listen.
But I couldn't move the door.
There's like just right there. Tick, tick.
Couldn't move the door.
Tick, tick. And so it's not happening in a sequence like a watch, which is interesting. And we went back, investigated. There were clocks. They didn't have batteries. They were broken or they were far away, and they weren't the kind of sound. They wouldn't have made that kind of sound if they did. And no one was wearing a watch during that period of time. And it also is strange that you have the glass barrier and you have the sound being picked up by the B camera, and then you also have the sound being picked up kind of in the main room on the shotgun mic. Again, that didn't make the film. We didn't feel like that warranted that, but it was interesting that we had this clicking sound and it wasn't a watch. At least I feel it wasn't, because of how it changes and it doesn't stay consistent. Watches are very, very precise and they usually hit that, but it could have been a broken watch. Anyhow, all right. Another thing that happened is during Nick's interview, and here I think Nick looks kind of nervous and uncomfortable, and it fails. This is the beginning of Nick's interview, and then Rebecca's walking up the stairs, and she's going to open a door that's going to let the light from the window pour in. And I was, with all the other things going on, I decided to kind of just take a look at this footage around that time frame. And I noticed when she opened that door that I could see this picture frame, and what I thought at the moment was a picture. And then I thought I saw a face in it, and I was exploring like this kind of headshot of a woman, and to me, it kind of looks like a woman in the shadows. I see an eye here, an eye here. I see the nose here. I see her mouth down here, and I see her chin coming up the side. She has hair falling down this way, her neck, and then there's like a collar coming around here, and her shoulders. And I thought that was really interesting. I wasn't sure what it was, and so that's what I went back and met Rob for, because I wanted to see what that was. And I thought it was a picture, but when we got there and looked at the wall, we realized it was this mirror right here. And that kind of surprised us, right? So when we were working on the cut, though, we felt like this was what is called pareidolia. And that's when you look at something long enough that you start to see shapes in it. So if you look at the puffy clouds in the blue sky, and you see a dragon like my son might see, or a rocket, or an elephant like my daughter might see, and that's just something that humans have developed over time, and that we are able to look at something and kind of read what's in it, even though it feels like shema. So and that would have been really important to survival at some point, because if you were in a field of grass and that grass was golden and there was a lion creeping up on you and you couldn't see it, that would have been a problem. But if you could make a form out and then start looking at it more, you might actually see that lion sitting still, and that might have given you the time to alert others and save your life. When you take a look at all the things that happened in this little window of time as we were closing out our time at Sand Hill, and you say, hey, so this light failed, right? And then in this message that got somehow this formed, it says, take a look at the digital light. And you have this digital light failed. You have these batteries that Rob says he charged that didn't work. We plugged into the wall. I think that's very interesting. You know, that tapped us into the energy source directly tied to the building. And then you have that message that came from that, given that I had to pull those down. I didn't mix them up though. I just kept them in order. And, you know, you also have this strange ticking sound and possibly the image of a woman in a mirror. And all of this, and then, you know, leads that message that gets disclosed, and a tree crashes down right where we were. There's so much going on here, and it just seems extraordinary to me. And it's something that I'm left wondering and curious to go out and do more of these and learn more and try to explore this subject. All right, guys, so that's it. You know, if you have questions, leave them in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. One thing is to make sure you subscribe, and more importantly, make sure you ring the bell, because if you want to stay tuned and you want to be notified when there's new videos going up, that's how you're going to get notified.